I never imagined that a casual trip to a small town in the English countryside would lead me to one of the most profound and disturbing mysteries of my life. It all began during a leisurely stroll through a quaint flea market nestled in the heart of this picturesque village. The market was a labyrinth of stalls, each offering a curious assortment of antiques, trinkets, and forgotten treasures from times long past. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of rain-soaked earth and the faint aroma of freshly baked bread from a nearby bakery. As I meandered through the stalls, my eyes were drawn to a peculiar booth tucked away in a shadowy corner. The vendor, an eccentric-looking old man named Harold, sat behind a cluttered table piled high with dusty books and peculiar artifacts. His appearance was as intriguing as his wares. Wild, unkempt white hair framed his weathered face, and his eyes, sharp and alert, seemed to hold secrets of their own. "Looking for something special?" Harold croaked, his voice a gravelly whisper that matched his appearance. "Just browsing," I replied, though something about his collection piqued my curiosity. Among the clutter, a particular book caught my eye. It was bound in worn, dark leather, its surface marred by age and use. There was no title on its cover, just a strange symbol embossed in faded gold. I reached out, drawn inexplicably to it. "You have a keen eye," Harold commented, watching me closely. "That one's a bit of a mystery. Found it in an old estate sale. People say it's cursed." I chuckled, assuming he was trying to add allure to his merchandise. "Cursed, you say? What's the story?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "They say it's the Necronomicon, a book filled with dark secrets and forbidden knowledge. Those who've owned it well. Let's just say they didn't fare too well." His words, though intended to warn, only fueled my intrigue. I had heard whispers of such a book, tales of madness and mystery, but had always dismissed them as mere folklore. Yet here it was, resting in my hands, its presence both ominous and compelling. "How much?" I asked, my curiosity outweighing my skepticism. Harold hesitated, as if weighing the consequences of his decision. "For you, £100. But be careful, lad. Some knowledge is best left undiscovered." I handed over the money, a thrill of excitement coursing through me. As I walked away with the book tucked under my arm, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just crossed a threshold into the unknown. The journey back to my lodgings was filled with anticipation. I found myself glancing at the book repeatedly, its presence both comforting and unsettling. What secrets lay within its pages? What truths or terrors awaited me? That evening, seated by the warm glow of a crackling fire, I examined the book more closely. The leather binding was supple yet sturdy, as if it had been crafted to withstand the passage of centuries. I traced the strange symbol on the cover with my fingers, feeling a subtle energy beneath my touch. Despite Harold's warning, I felt an overwhelming urge to open it, to delve into the mysteries it promised. Yet, a small voice in the back of my mind cautioned against it, reminding me of the old man's words. As night fell, I placed the book on the table beside my bed, resolving to explore its contents in the morning. But sleep eluded me, my mind racing with possibilities and questions. What had I truly stumbled upon? Was it merely an old book, or something far more sinister? The answers, I knew, lay within its pages, and as the shadows danced across the walls, I realized that my life was about to change in ways I could never have imagined. Dawn broke over the small English town, shrouded in a light mist that added an extra layer of mystery to the already enigmatic atmosphere. After a restless night, my mind plagued by confused dreams and unanswered questions, I awoke with renewed determination. The ancient book, now resting on the table before me, seemed to call out, its secrets waiting to be unveiled. With a steaming cup of tea by my side, I settled comfortably into a worn armchair, ready to delve into the unknown. I gently opened the leather cover, the crackle of the old pages sounding like a solemn invitation. Inside, the pages were yellowed with age, adorned with strange symbols and texts written in a language unfamiliar to me. To my surprise, however, some sections had been translated into English. The words, though comprehensible, evoked disturbing images and frightening concepts. They spoke of ancient rituals, dark forces, and entities from other worlds. Each sentence seemed to vibrate with its own energy, as if the book itself was alive. As I leafed through the pages, I was struck by a particular passage. It described a ritual intended to summon an entity that, according to the text, possessed infinite knowledge, but demanded a terrible price in return. My heart raced as I read, each word seeming to resonate in the air around me. Suddenly, a sharp noise interrupted my concentration. I looked up to see Emma, my roommate, standing in the doorway, a curious expression on her face. "What are you reading so intently this morning?" she asked, stepping closer to take a look. "It's a book I found at the market yesterday," I replied, closing the volume slightly. "It's fascinating." She squinted, observing the untitled cover. "It looks old. What's it about?" I took a breath, hesitating for a moment. "It's supposed to be the Necronomicon, a book of occult knowledge." Emma raised her eyebrows, both intrigued and skeptical. "The Necronomicon? Like in Lovecraft's stories?" "Yes, exactly. But this one seems different, more real." She sat on the arm of the chair, her interest piqued. "And do you believe in all that? The rituals, the entities?" I shrugged, uncertain myself. "I don't know. But there's something about this book. Something powerful." Emma smiled slightly, shaking her head. "Be careful, Alex. Don't get too caught up in these things. We know how those stories end." Her words resonated with me, but curiosity had already taken deep root. After she left, I continued reading, unable to stop. Each page turn seemed to plunge me deeper into a world of mysteries and dangers. As the afternoon wore on, a strange sensation settled over me. It was as if the book was awakening something, a part of me I didn't know. An inexplicable connection was forming, binding me inexorably to its secrets. I realized then that it wasn't just a book I had discovered, but a gateway to a dark and unknown universe. And as the sun set, casting long and eerie shadows across the room, I understood that my exploration was only just beginning. Days turned into nights as I found myself increasingly drawn to the Necronomicon, the ancient tome that now seemed to occupy every waking thought. It was as if the book had a life of its own, a magnetic pull that kept me returning to its pages, eager to decipher its mysteries and uncover its secrets. Yet, with each passing day, a strange connection began to form between the book and me, one that was both exhilarating and terrifying. The nights were the worst. As soon as I closed my eyes, vivid and unsettling dreams invaded my mind. They were unlike any dreams I had experienced before, filled with shadowy figures cloaked in dark robes, their faces obscured by hoods. They moved silently through landscapes that defied earthly logic, vast, alien vistas under swirling skies of colors I couldn't name. In these dreams, I felt a presence, something ancient and powerful, watching me from the periphery. It was as if the book had opened a door in my subconscious, allowing these visions to seep through. I would wake up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding in my chest, the feeling of being watched lingering long after the dream had faded. During the day, the sensation of being observed persisted, a constant pressure at the back of my mind. It was subtle but unrelenting, like a whisper just beyond the edge of hearing. I found myself glancing over my shoulder more often, convinced that someone, or something, was following me. The rational part of my mind dismissed it as paranoia, but deep down, I knew it was connected to the book. One afternoon, as I sat at my desk, poring over the Necronomicon's cryptic passages, the room seemed to grow colder. The air thickened, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. It was then that I heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible voice, murmuring in a language I couldn't understand. The sound was both alluring and terrifying, like a siren's call echoing through the void. I shook my head, trying to dispel the voice, but it lingered, weaving itself into the fabric of my thoughts. Desperate for clarity, I reached out to touch the book, my fingers brushing against its aged pages. A jolt of energy shot through me, and for a brief moment, the room seemed to shift, the walls bending and warping as if reality itself was unraveling. "Alex, are you okay?" Emma's voice snapped me back to the present. She stood in the doorway, concern etched across her face. I blinked, the room returning to normal, the strange sensation dissipating. "Yeah, I'm fine," I replied, though my voice betrayed my uncertainty. She stepped inside, eyeing the book warily. "You've been spending a lot of time with that thing. Maybe it's time to take a break." I nodded, knowing she was right, yet unable to fully tear myself away. "I just need to understand it," I said, more to myself than to her. Emma sighed, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Just promise me you won't lose yourself in it." I offered a weak smile, appreciating her concern. "I promise." But as she left the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that the book was indeed changing me, drawing me deeper into its web of secrets and shadows. Each page I turned seemed to whisper promises of knowledge and power, yet the cost remained shrouded in mystery. The connection between the book and me grew stronger with each passing day, an unbreakable bond that both thrilled and frightened me. I knew I was on the brink of something monumental, but whether it was discovery or disaster, I couldn't yet tell. The days following my deepening connection with the Necronomicon were filled with an unsettling mix of fascination and dread. I knew I needed help to better understand what I was dealing with, so I decided to seek out someone with expertise in ancient texts and esoteric knowledge. My search led me to Professor John Whitaker, a renowned scholar at a nearby university known for his work on historical manuscripts and his particular interest in the arcane. The university campus was bustling with students when I arrived, a stark contrast to the solitary path I felt I was walking. I made my way to the history department, where Professor Whitaker's office was located. The walls were lined with bookshelves, each packed with volumes on history, mythology, and the occult. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and ink, a comforting aroma that reminded me of my own growing library of the strange and mysterious. Professor Whitaker was a tall, thin man with a shock of white hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through me. He greeted me warmly, though his expression turned serious when I mentioned the Necronomicon. "You say you have a copy of the Necronomicon?" he asked, his voice a mix of curiosity and caution. I nodded, placing the book on his desk. "I found it at a market. The vendor warned me about it, but I didn't take him seriously at first." Whitaker leaned over the book, his fingers tracing the symbol on the cover with a reverence that bordered on fear. "I've studied many texts in my time, but the Necronomicon is one of those that stands apart. It's said to contain knowledge that can drive a person to madness." His words sent a shiver down my spine, echoing the warnings I'd already heard. "Do you think it's real? That it holds actual power?" He sat back, his gaze thoughtful. "Whether or not the power is real, the belief in it certainly is. Many who have come into contact with this book have vanished or lost their minds. It's a dangerous thing to possess." I felt a knot form in my stomach, the weight of the book's potential consequences suddenly more tangible. "I need to understand it, though. There's something about it that calls to me." Whitaker studied me for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. "I can help you decipher some of the texts, provide context, but I must caution you, knowledge is not always a blessing." We spent the next few hours going over the book, Whitaker pointing out passages and symbols, explaining their historical and mythical significance. His insights were invaluable, shedding light on the dark corners of the text. Yet, with each revelation, my apprehension grew. The book was more than just a collection of arcane rituals and lore. It was a map to a world beyond our own, a world filled with entities and forces that defied comprehension. As we concluded our session, Whitaker looked at me with a mixture of pity and respect. "You've embarked on a path few dare to tread, Alex. Be mindful of where it leads." I left the university with a heavy heart, the professor's warnings echoing in my mind. The allure of the Necronomicon was undeniable, but so was the danger it posed. I was caught between the desire for knowledge and the fear of what that knowledge might cost me. The journey back home was a blur, my thoughts consumed by the implications of what I had learned. The book felt heavier in my bag, as if it had absorbed the gravity of the day's discoveries. I knew I was in over my head, yet turning back seemed impossible. The path I had chosen was fraught with peril, but the promise of understanding was too great to ignore. As I stepped into my apartment, the familiar shadows greeted me, a reminder of the darkness I was inviting into my life. The Necronomicon sat on my desk, silent and unassuming, yet its presence was overwhelming. I was playing with forces I barely understood, and the stakes were higher than I had ever imagined. The evening was quiet, a deceptive calm that belied the turmoil within me. The Necronomicon sat on my desk, its presence both a comfort and a curse. Despite the warnings from Professor Whitaker, I found myself irresistibly drawn to its pages, the promise of forbidden knowledge too tempting to resist. As night fell, shrouding the world outside in darkness, I decided to delve deeper into the book's mysteries. The room was dimly lit by a single lamp, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. I settled into my chair, the air around me thick with anticipation. The book opened easily, almost as if it was eager to reveal its secrets. I turned to a section I hadn't yet explored, a chapter detailing rituals said to bridge the gap between our world and others. As I read, the words seemed to shimmer on the page, their meaning both clear and elusive. The ritual described was complex, involving symbols and incantations that I could barely comprehend. Yet there was something compelling about it, a sense of power that called to me from beyond the veil of reality. Without fully understanding why, I found myself following the instructions, tracing the symbols in the air, my voice a whisper as I repeated the incantations. The atmosphere in the room changed, the air growing heavy and charged with energy. It was as if the very fabric of the world was bending, responding to my actions. Suddenly, the shadows in the room began to move, coalescing into vague, spectral shapes. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through me. I tried to stop, to break the connection, but it was too late. The ritual had taken on a life of its own, spiraling beyond my control. A voice, deep and guttural, echoed around me, speaking in a language I couldn't understand. It was both terrifying and mesmerizing, a promise of knowledge that no human should possess. The room seemed to warp and shift, the walls bending and swaying as if reality itself was unraveling. "Who dares to call upon the Ancient Ones?" the voice intoned, its words resonating with a power that shook me to my core. I didn't mean to," I stammered, feeling the weight of my actions pressing down on me. "You have opened the door," the voice continued, its tone both admonishing and inviting. "Now you must face what lies beyond." Panic gripped me as the shadows grew darker, more defined. I could see faces within them, eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light, watching me with a mix of curiosity and malice. I was frozen, caught between the fear of the unknown and the allure of what these entities might reveal. The voice spoke again, softer this time, almost coaxing. "There are secrets here, truths that could change everything. But the cost is high, immortal. What will you sacrifice?" The question hung in the air, a challenge and a warning. I realized then the true danger of the Necronomicon. It wasn't just a book of knowledge. It was a conduit to powers and entities that defied human understanding, and I had unwittingly opened myself to them. With a supreme effort of will, I tore my gaze away from the shadows, focusing on the here and now. The room slowly returned to normal, the spectral figures dissolving into nothingness, the voice fading into silence. I was left alone, the book closed on the desk, its secrets once again hidden from view. I sat there for a long time, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. The line between curiosity and recklessness had been crossed, and I was left to ponder the consequences of my actions. The Necronomicon had given me a glimpse of what lay beyond the veil, but at what cost? As the first light of dawn crept through the window, I knew that I had been irrevocably changed. The book had awakened something within me, a hunger for knowledge that could not easily be sated. But I also understood the danger it posed, a double-edged sword that could just as easily destroy me. The days following the unintentional ritual were marked by a profound shift in my perception of reality. It was as if the veil between the world I knew and something far more sinister had been lifted. Subtle changes began to manifest in my everyday life, blurring the lines between the real and the imagined. It started with the shadows. They no longer behaved as mere absences of light, but seemed to possess a life of their own. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, a lingering effect of the ritual's intensity. But as the days passed, the shadows grew bolder, moving independently of any light source, forming shapes and patterns that defied logic. One evening, as I sat in my living room, the flickering candlelight cast long, wavering shadows on the walls. I watched, transfixed, as the shadows began to shift, coalescing into a figure that seemed to watch me with unseen eyes. My heart raced, a cold sweat forming on my brow. I blinked, and the figure dissipated, leaving me questioning my sanity. The auditory hallucinations followed soon after. At first, it was just a faint whisper, barely audible, like the rustling of leaves in the wind. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent, and I could almost make out words in a language I didn't understand. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, echoing in the silence of my apartment. One night, as I lay in bed, the whispers crescendoed into a cacophony of voices, each one overlapping the other. I covered my ears, but the sound seemed to bypass my physical senses, resonating directly in my mind. "What do you want from me?" I shouted into the darkness, my voice trembling with fear and frustration. The voices fell silent, and for a moment, the room was eerily quiet. Then a single voice, clear and commanding, spoke. "You have opened the door. Now you must walk the path." The next morning, I felt a strange sense of clarity, as if the voices had imparted some understanding to me. I began to notice things I had never seen before, subtle shifts in the fabric of reality, glimpses of another world just beyond the edge of perception. It was both exhilarating and terrifying, a constant reminder of the power I had tapped into. I decided to visit Professor Whitaker again, hoping he could provide some insight into what was happening to me. As I walked into his office, he looked up, his eyes widening slightly as he took in my appearance. "Alex, you look different," he said, his voice tinged with concern. "I feel different," I admitted, taking a seat across from him. "Ever since the ritual, I've been experiencing things, seeing and hearing things that I can't explain." Whitaker leaned forward, his expression serious. "Tell me everything." I recounted the events of the past few days, the shadows, the whispers, the voice that had spoken to me. He listened intently, his fingers steepled under his chin. When I finished, he sat back, a thoughtful look on his face. "It sounds like the ritual you performed has opened your mind to another dimension," he said slowly. "The Necronomicon is known to act as a conduit to other realms, and it seems you've tapped into that connection." "But why me?" I asked, frustration creeping into my voice. "Why is this happening?" Whitaker sighed. "The book chooses its readers. It reveals itself to those it deems worthy, or perhaps those it finds useful. You've been marked, Alex. The knowledge you seek comes at a price." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What should I do?" He shook his head. "I can't tell you that. This is your journey. But be cautious. The line between enlightenment and madness is thin, and the Necronomicon has a way of blurring that line." As I left his office, his words echoed in my mind. The book had indeed changed me, opening my eyes to a reality that most people could never comprehend. But the cost of this revelation was becoming increasingly clear. The knowledge I sought was not without its dangers, and the path I had chosen was fraught with peril. Back in my apartment, I sat down with the Necronomicon once more. The shadows seemed to gather around me, their presence a constant reminder of the power I had unleashed. As I turned the pages, I felt a sense of purpose, a drive to uncover the secrets hidden within. But I also knew that with each revelation, the stakes grew higher, and the price I would have to pay became more uncertain. The realization that my contact with the Necronomicon was transforming me left me in a state of constant unease. The shadows, the whispers, the glimpses of another dimension, they were all signs that I was treading a dangerous path. Yet, the allure of the forbidden knowledge within the book was impossible to ignore. I found myself at a crossroads, torn between the desire to uncover its secrets and the fear of what those secrets might cost me. Days turned into weeks, and the changes within me became more pronounced. My perception of reality continued to shift, the boundaries between the mundane and the supernatural growing increasingly blurred. I could see and hear things that defied explanation, fragments of a world that existed just beyond the reach of ordinary senses. It was both a gift and a curse, a constant reminder of the power I had tapped into. One evening, as I sat in my apartment, the weight of the decision before me became overwhelming. The Necronomicon lay open on the table, its pages filled with arcane symbols and cryptic passages. I knew that continuing down this path would lead to further revelations, but also to greater dangers. The price of knowledge was becoming clearer with each passing day. I reached for my phone and dialed Emma's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice a welcome sound amidst the chaos of my thoughts. "Hey, Alex. How are you holding up?" she asked, concern evident in her tone. "I don't know, Emma," I admitted, my voice heavy with uncertainty. "I think I might be in over my head with this book. It's changing me, and I'm not sure if it's for the better." There was a pause on the other end of the line before she responded. "Why don't you come over? We can talk about it. Maybe getting out of your apartment for a bit will help clear your mind." I agreed, grateful for the offer of company. As I made my way to Emma's place, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The shadows seemed to follow me, their presence a constant reminder of the power I had unleashed. By the time I arrived, I was on edge, my nerves frayed. Emma greeted me with a warm hug, her concern evident in her eyes. "Come in. Let's talk." We sat down in her living room, the soft glow of the lamps providing a comforting contrast to the shadows that had become my constant companions. I explained everything to her, the ritual, the voices, the changes in my perception. She listened intently, her expression a mix of worry and determination. "Alex, you need to be careful," she said once I had finished. "This book sounds dangerous. Maybe you should consider getting rid of it." "I've thought about that," I replied, my voice tinged with frustration. "But every time I try to put it away, something pulls me back. It's like the book has a hold on me." Emma reached out and took my hand, her grip reassuring. "You don't have to face this alone. We can figure it out together. Maybe there's a way to break whatever connection the book has with you." Her words gave me a glimmer of hope, but I knew that the decision ultimately rested with me. The Necronomicon had opened a door to a world of knowledge and power, but it had also brought with it a host of dangers. The question was whether I was willing to pay the price. That night, back in my apartment, I sat down with the Necronomicon once more. The shadows gathered around me, their presence a constant reminder of the power I had unleashed. As I turned the pages, I felt a sense of purpose, a drive to uncover the secrets hidden within. But I also knew that with each revelation, the stakes grew higher, and the price I would have to pay became more uncertain. In the quiet of the night, I made my decision. I would continue to explore the Necronomicon, but with caution. I would seek out knowledge, but not at the expense of my sanity or my soul. The path I had chosen was fraught with peril, but it was also filled with potential. And as long as I remained vigilant, I believed I could navigate the dangers and uncover the truths that lay hidden within the ancient tome. The journey ahead was uncertain, but I was determined to face it head-on. The Necronomicon had chosen me, and I would not shy away from the challenges it presented. With a deep breath, I closed the book and prepared for the trials to come, resolved to uncover the secrets of the forbidden knowledge, no matter the cost.